Good Tuesday afternoon to you. Hope you had a great holiday weekend. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. A little later in the show, we will be joined by Mac Robinson. We'll talk plenty of Browns football, and that's where we begin. We will be joined in just a minute by Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as brownzone.com and Zone Coverage Podcast. Some things happened, though. Jarvis Landry dropped Just Juice on YouTube and showed us some behind-the-scenes video. Again, this is from Just Juice, Jarvis Landry's YouTube show. Let's welcome in Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram. And Scott, you look at that and certainly looks like some of the guys getting excited and ready to go. Training camp 3 weeks away. Hard to believe.
Yeah, it is. You know, it's good to see the guys get together. Number one, they're working on the game, and that was necessary for the offense when they didn't go to OTAs, that they get together on their own. And then the other thing that struck me about that video that I watched last night was a sense of camaraderie and chemistry. Not only are they working out together in Austin, where Baker Mayfield lives, you know, they're going on the boat together, they're riding jet skis. They really seem like they're having a good time together, and I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, you know, it didn't seem forced at all. They genuinely seemed to like each other, and those are usually, you know, good signs for team building and teams that are going to, you know, they're going to get in some tight spots, and it's much easier to do things when you like the guy that's lining up next to you.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And you know, we always knew that Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. had that bond, right? They've been best friends since they were in high school. But when you see, you know, Austin Hooper there, and you see Kareem Hunt and David Njoku and Donovan Peoples-Jones, right? The guy who's the second-year receiver who Baker Mayfield said looks in great shape, and I think the Browns have high hopes for. It feels like that circle is expanding.
Yeah, without question. The other thing that we got to hear and see a little bit of, most of that was from, you know, Camp Mayfield down in Austin, Texas. Got to see some of Odell Beckham and just hear how he's doing. And take a look at this.
As far as like the hardest part for me was to be on this.
It's definitely a mental thing right now.
Yeah, that's the battle. Cause you don't want you know what I'm saying?
You don't want more, ain't it?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
And then it's hard to slow you down because when you get going, you know what I'm saying?
Simple.
Yeah, you know, it's hard. It's
Where the
hard.
train walk, like you're like, all right, man.
Run a little bit.
Good. I could.
Yeah.
And then you can't really do it. So now you waiting to get to 6 months. Now you can run. Now you trying to cut. And you like, oh, hold on. Yeah, I'm running full speed, but yeah.
Like up and down and up again and down.
Man, I feel like month 4 was like the hardest for me. Like I was really like everyday fighting. It's gonna be a special year, bro.
And Scott, again, you got to love hearing that. You know, it's going to be a special year, and that's kind of a recurring theme with all of these guys.
It is, and you know, that's the one sentence that jumped out at me when I watched it. And you know, I think we have to remember that, you know, Odell says that kind of thing a lot. You know, he said 2020 was going to be his best year ever, and it turned out obviously not to be the best year with the ACL and the pandemic. But I like the fact that he's optimistic that, you know, things have not gone well for Odell the first 2 years in Cleveland, and he still seems excited. You know, I thought that special quote was obviously worth noting. And then the other part of that is just how these athletes, these elite athletes, fight through big injuries like the torn ACL. And, you know, I mean, I know regular people go through rehab after they have injuries and surgeries, but obviously it's not the same. And you watch Odell on that treadmill, and I've watched, his Instagram videos for months, and man, he's making such good progress. But inside that progress are hurdles and doubts that he has to get over. And the fact that it seems like he's cleared all of them in time to be either at 100% or really close to 100% by the start of training camp is impressive, and it's encouraging for the Browns.
Yeah, without question. And he's a guy that, probably feels like he has something to prove, which takes us to our next point. CBSSports.com, top bounce-back candidates in all the NFL, and number 1, Odell Beckham Jr., Danielle Hunter, the D-lineman, is 2, Julio Jones 3, Christian McCaffrey, who was injured for the Panthers 4, and Nick Bosa 5. But number 1, Odell Beckham Jr., and a motivated Odell Beckham Jr. is usually a guy that's great for your team, bad for the opponent.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, we saw in 2019, right, Odell was never healthy. He hurt he had the core muscle injury. He fought through it. He played all 16 games, but it was a struggle, barely got 2,000 yards. Then last year seemed healthy. And I keep flashing back to that Cowboys game where he had the 3 touchdowns, and he had that end around where he, went 12 yards behind the line of scrimmage and then turned it into the ceiling touchdown, and think, okay, when Odell's healthy, the impact he can have. So, I don't know if he's the number 1 bounce back candidate, but he certainly deserves to be mentioned in the top 5. I think the fact that his name is Odell Beckham Jr. and people gravitate toward that name makes him a natural to be the number 1 choice. But just what he can do for this offense, the other pieces around him, I think it certainly sets up for Odell to be a huge factor on this team. Now, I don't know if he's going to have Julio Jones type numbers if they're both healthy, just because I think there's more weapons around Odell, but I think he can certainly have a huge impact on a Super Bowl contender.
The other thing is I trust Kevin Stefanski to find unique ways to get him involved and to use him at critical times, and that's what you'll want from a dominant wide receiver. Give him the opportunity to make big plays that change games.
Yeah, and I think we saw that. Obviously, Odell got hurt too early last year, but we started to see that. And again, that Cowboys game, handing him the ball, having Jarvis Landry throwing passes, getting him, kind of bubble screens and hitches early in the game so he gets in a flow. And I think that's something that Stefanski realized as those first couple of weeks progressed and said, hey, I really have to get Odell in the flow early because, we flash back, I think it was the opener against Baltimore, where there were a bunch of targets, but he didn't really have a whole lot of success. And there was talk about, okay, you got to get Odell involved. You got to get him involved. And I think Stefanski kind of found a little bit of a rhythm. And if he has Odell for a full 16 or 17 games, I would expect that to just grow exponentially.
Yeah, without question. So the question becomes that some people are asking nationally, where is Odell Beckham kind of in the pecking order? Kyle Brandt from NFL Network had this to say on Odell Beckham.
I don't know who Odell Beckham Jr. is. We've lost track of this amazing athlete and rock star in our league. I don't know who he is. Is he still like this number 1 superstar receiver? Is he fine being a number 2? Is he part of a tandem? How good is he? Can you count on him? And I just want to do a quick little Odell State of the Nation here. Let's do a little argument. If you had to win one big game right now and you could pick any receiver you want in the league, like where is Odell on that list? Is he still like in the top 12? Is he in the top 15? Would you rather have Allen Robinson than Odell? Would you rather have Justin Jefferson? Would you rather have Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley? Would you rather have Jarvis Landry? There's a lot of guys that the answer is probably yes. And I just remember, I feel like 20 minutes ago, the answer to that question was maybe like 5 guys or 3 guys or 1 guy. So where is he now? Like, is he ever going to be that giant again? Garrett Foley, you were talking last segment how the Cam Newton of 2015 is never coming back. Fine. Well, what about the Odell of 2016 or even 2017? Is that guy capable of coming back? Or is he just going to be like a nice, 60 catch, 5 touchdown guy who's very famous and does a nice role with the Browns? Or is he still the guy? My answer in one sentence, for Cleveland to have success and get to the Super Bowl, again, JB says, Jarvis and Odell need to be the best tandem in the league. In the league.
I don't know that I'd go that far, but they certainly, if Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. are the best wide receiving tandem in the league, it's going to be an awfully fun fall in Cleveland.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, the Browns have, in my mind, undoubtedly the number one running back tandem in the league, right? So if you have the top running back tandem, top receiver tandem, you're going to score a ton of points. I think that tandem needs to be top 5 in the league, and I think they are. It's an interesting discussion about Odell, though. I still would list him as the number one ahead of Jarvis. That might upset Jarvis or might motivate Jarvis because, he played a full season last year. I just think Odell, assuming he's healthy and he looks healthy, is more physically gifted, not only than Jarvis Landry, but than 99% or 95% of receivers in this league. So if you take that in consideration and you say, yes, he's healthy, I think he's a top 10 guy in this league. Now, he might not catch 80 balls for 1,500 yards because the Browns offense isn't designed to do that. But can he take over a game? Yes, I still think he can do that. And if you're picking a receiver for one game, I think he's still in that top 10. I would take him ahead of Allen Robinson. I would take him ahead of Justin Jefferson just because he hasn't, he's only had the 1 year in the league. I think when you're off the grid, so to speak, for a year or half a year and almost 2 years now because of the injuries, it's easy to forget how dominant Odell was. And I think he's still young enough and healthy enough and certainly talented enough to be a top 10 talented receiver. That doesn't mean he'll have those stats, but I think he can have that type of an impact.
Yeah, and you know what? I would guess that at this point in his career, if the Browns get to a Super Bowl and he gets to the big stage, it's probably what he would like most.
I would think so. And now maybe, you go to Super Bowl and you win a Super Bowl and then, or 1 or 2, whatever the situation is, and then you say, hey, let me go be the guy for one season somewhere, and try to prove that I can catch 120 balls, because we saw Stephon Diggs kind of transform that Buffalo offense, but he was the guy. And I don't know if Odell's going to be the guy in this offense, and maybe that's still a dream of his, but I think in the interim, you're right. He would be more than happy to win a Super Bowl or 2 in Cleveland with his best buddy Jarvis.
Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we will take a look at the defensive line. Enormous potential, some questions to answer, and also where does one of those guys, Myles Garrett, line up as an edge rusher as far as the rankings go? Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with Scott Petrak from the Zone Coverage podcast as well as the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. Scott, I know you have written about this. Defensive line, a lot of potential, but some questions that need to be answered. Take us through kind of the thought process and what you found with the D-line.
Yeah, first of all, it's such an important position, right? I know the Browns have invested a lot in the secondary, but to me, everything starts up front with the defense. And can you get to the quarterback and you stop the run at the same time? And when you have Myles Garrett, all right, you have one guy. And then the Browns went and signed Jadeveon Clowney and Takk McKinley. And you go, okay, well, that's 3 first-round draft picks. 2 of those guys were overall number 1s. You're good to go. And they have a whole lot of depth at defensive tackle. So you think, okay, and I think it has a chance to be dominant. And Jadeveon Clowney, when we talked to him in minicamp, compared it to the 2019 49ers line, which led the team to the Super Bowl. It had Nick Bosa Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner, and they had 5 number 1 picks. And when you make that comparison, I can see it, right? Because there is that type of talent. But I think there's a couple of things you have to worry about. And is if Jadeveon Clowney gets hurt, which is his history. He's only had one full season in the league. Last year, he played 8 games with no sacks and had, surgery on his knee in December. If he gets hurt for any significant amount of time or for the significant games, right? We're talking December and January. Then I question the depth. Is Takk McKinley ready to be your number 2 end? And if he's not, or if he is, then your number 3 end now becomes Curtis Weaver or Porter Gustin. And I have questions there. And it feels like a position where you need as much depth as possible. So it's really important that Clowney stays healthy for this line to live up to its dominant potential. And then when you look at the interior, they lost both starters. Larry Ogunjobi, who I know a lot of people think underperformed last year, and maybe he did, but to me, he's still a starter in this league. And then Sheldon Richardson was cut, and to me, he was a borderline Pro Bowl guy. So you lose both starters inside. Then you replace him with Andrew Billings, who opted out last year but was a starter with the Bengals, and Malik Jackson, who I like. He's a veteran guy. He's a different body type. He's 6'5", 290. I think he's still got some stuff left in the tank. You can play him at end if you want to go really big up front. So I still think it might be a drop-off from the 2 guys that they had last year. And then the depth after that is still unproven. Jordan Elliott, the 3rd-round pick a year ago, didn't do a whole lot as a rookie. Now, if he steps up and lives up to that 3rd-round billing, then all of a sudden you have, another big-time body in it. And then you have Tommy Togiai, the rookie, who I like, but he still needs to prove it. Marvin Wilson, the undrafted guy that the Browns obviously liked because they paid him a big bonus to sign him, but he's still a rookie, and he was undrafted. Malik McDowell, the former 2nd-round pick who's never played an NFL game and has had all kinds of off-the-field issues. So I just think there's some questions there at a position that's going to be so important. And, again, the upside is huge, but a couple things need to go the right way and a couple questions need to be answered for it to be as good as the Browns need it to be.
Yeah, and the flip side of it is Andrew Berry has given multiple options, which I like the thinking. You name all those guys, and the thought has to be 1 or 2 of these guys is going to have a year where they kind of break out.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think that's especially true at D-tackle. You throw a lot of bodies at it, and they'll be able to figure it out. Chris Kiffin, the D-line coach, and Joe Woods, the coordinator, will figure it out. And if Clowney stays healthy, then, you got Clowney and Garrett and McKinley, and with Malik Jackson is kind of your 4-man passing situations pass rush, and I really like that. Where I have questions is, is Curtis Weaver good enough to play in the league? He was a rookie, bunch of sacks at Boise State, but, the Dolphins cut him when he was hurt. Instead of just putting him on IR. The Browns picked him up. He's a big wild card. Porter Gustin played a good amount last year. I think it's solid against the run, but really didn't show much as a pass rusher. So, that's where the questions are. And, again, when you look at this team as a whole, there's not a lot of weak links and there's not a lot of questions. And I think we're kind of looking for some questions. But for it to be such a key area, those are kind of the concerns I have. And now, if Clowney gets injured, maybe the Browns make another move. Maybe Olivier Vernon gets healthy from that Achilles and the Browns can sign him. Or, bring back Adrian Claiborne or find another veteran that you can sign during the season to plug in and he can have an impact. Now, the hope, obviously, is Clowney stays healthy and he looked really good in minicamp. You just hope that when the season comes to its biggest points that he's able to play.
Yeah, without question. So Jeremy Fowler from ESPN ranked the top 10 edge rushers. This is an ESPN article. Top 1, Myles Garrett, ahead of T.J. Watt, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and Chandler Jones. So Myles Garrett, best edge rusher. He was flashing that last year.
He was. That's interesting because I think he's the most talented, when you look at that body and just got some of the plays he made. And you mentioned it, especially at the beginning last year. Those 4 forced fumbles he had, and I think it was the first 4 games. I mean, he was making a game-changing play every week. And then he had the sack or the forced safety when Phillip Rivers, I think, had an intentional grounding out of the end zone. That was credited to Myles Garrett. He just kept making big play after big play. Then he had a little bit of an injury, and then he had COVID, and that really, cut short the season. Even though he returned, he wasn't the same guy, and he admits that. But when you're doing a ranking like that, if you're doing it on potential and talent, I could see Myles being number 1. if you're doing it on pure production to this point in their careers, you know, I mean, TJ Watt had a better year than Myles did last year because he stayed healthy the whole time. He had more sacks than Myles did. You know, I think you say the same thing about Joey Bosa. He's had some injuries too, but he's had some big time productive years. Khalil Mack has done it forever. So it's interesting because I've seen other rankings where Myles doesn't rank as high. So, you know, I guess it's kind of in the eye of the beholder, but I think Myles is due, and I think we saw shades of it last year, is due for that truly bust out year where he either wins Defensive Player of the Year or he finishes second to Aaron Donald, and he leads the league in sacks, and he's in the MVP discussion because he really does have that kind of talent. Now, if Jadeveon Clowney can stay healthy, I think that frees up Myles Garrett a little more, and those sack numbers could even jump, which, you know, when you're a voter, you pay a lot of attention to sack numbers, and that generates a lot of conversation.
Yeah, you know, I think that's I would agree wholeheartedly with that. Well, Myles Garrett kind of getting ready for training camp, and, you know, that means he has spent some time out fishing, and he shared this with us. This one did not get away, and that is a big fish Myles Garrett brought in. And so, again, not much this guy can't do. Looks like he's a pretty good fisherman too, Scott.
Yeah, I can't get over those muscles. He walks around without his shirt a bunch. So I've seen those abs and those biceps, but every time it's impressive. I think that was a tuna because he said tuna for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So, you know, I'm a big fan of the ahi tuna, and, you know, good for Myles. And I know he can dunk a basketball. He can catch a fish. He can go get a quarterback. He can run fast. He was in that ESPN Body magazine. The guy can do a lot of stuff.
Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll check in John Johnson getting ready for the season, doing some drills. Take a look and see what the newest safety for the Browns has been up to. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with Scott Petrick from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as Zone Coverage podcast and BrownsZone.com. So John Johnson, one of the big name signings for the Browns defense, getting ready for the season, doing some drills. Let's take a look at John Johnson.
Oh. Get there. Good. Oh. Get there. Good.
Scott Petrak, John Johnson doing some ball drills. Good to know that the Browns are going to have that guy back protecting the deep middle of the field quite often.
It really is. You know, we talk about how the defense is going to be remade this year and could have 9 new starters. You know, Jadeveon Clowney, we talk about a lot, but John Johnson III was the Browns' #1 target in free agency, right? He's the highest paid guy that they signed. He was the first guy that they signed. And we know Joe Woods wants to use a bunch of defensive backs, corners, safeties. And Andrew Berry felt necessary to go get a big-time safety and spend money for him to pair with Grant Delpit and Ronnie Harrison. So I'm looking forward to seeing John Johnson III. People rave about him with the Rams. You know, they didn't want to lose him, but they were paying other guys. They thought they had another safety that they could slide into the spot. And I think it was just a perfect storm for the Browns to wind up with a guy that's going to have a huge role for him and probably never leave the field.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be a fan favorite as well. So the Bleacher Report ranks the top 10 offseason dominoes to fall. 1 is Aaron Rodgers, that getting settled. 2, Deshaun Watson. 7, extensions for the quarterback class of 2018. That would be Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. What do you think about that? Do you think any of those or all of those or none of those get signed before the season starts?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so much discussion about it, and I'm not sure it matters for the 2021 season if any of the guys sign. I still think they're all going to have good years, and their 3 teams are going to be AFC championship contenders. But it's interesting. We all want to talk about it, and it's quarterbacks, and it's important, and they're all going to get a bunch of money, and it affects each team's salary cap. And I think all 3 are going to get signed before the season. Now, you know, I don't know if I'd put that percentage at 75 or 80, but I would put it above 50 that all 3 of them get signed, and I would almost guarantee that at least one gets signed, you know, whether that's Lamar or Josh Allen first or that Baker gets his taken care of first. I don't know, but it just feels like once the team knows that they have the quarterback, and, you know, I know Baltimore feels it does, I know Buffalo feels it does, and I know Cleveland feels it does, then it just makes sense to get the guy locked up long term.
Yeah, the price of quarterbacks is only going up in the NFL. It is not going down. So invest in those quarterbacks. All right, so 8 on that list, defensive overhaul in Cleveland. And this one's going to be really interesting to watch how quickly that comes together out in Berea.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, it's it draws all the headlines, and it's so obvious to say, well, week 1 is at Kansas City. And it's Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. You know, it's probably unfair to expect the Browns defense to be at full strength. They're clicking on all cylinders week 1. So if they don't play great against, you know, the best offense in the league, I don't think anybody should panic. I think it might take a little bit of time for chemistry and cohesion to be found. But I don't think it'll take, you know, all season. I think by week 6, week 7, everything should be running smoothly and operating smoothly. And I do think having a guy like John Johnson III in the back end really helps. And a linebacker like Anthony Walker Jr. in the middle will kind of get everyone on the same page on the field and ease some of those rough spots. But it's going to be interesting to see how fast everybody comes together, because we all know that the starters aren't going to play a bunch in the preseason. So, you know, week 1 at Kansas City will be the first time they play 65 snaps together. And I think it's just fair and realistic to expect some growing.
Yeah, I would agree. The thing that I really want to see is how they game plan, because I think the defense could change drastically week to week just because they have so many moving parts that are versatile and good football players. And I think they're going to be able to change some things up.
Yeah, I agree completely. And whether it's playing 6 defensive backs, whether 1 week it's playing, you know, 3 linebackers a lot, because we talked about nickel and dime package. Well, that takes linebackers off the field. But if you play a team like Baltimore that runs it a lot, maybe Taki and Anthony Walker Jr. and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, maybe those 3 guys are on the field a ton. Or you sub in Jacob Phillips in one of those spots. You know, how they do the rotation up front with the ends and the tackles. I think you're right. I think each week we're going to see different packages on defense as well as offense. I just think there's so much depth on both sides of the ball that I don't know if we're going to be able to say from week to week, yeah, these are going to be your 11 guys that play the most on either side of the ball. I think that could change on a weekly basis.
And you know what? That's a really good thing, too. All right, so we've talked a little bit about Baker Mayfield's extension. There's a lot of guys that are due, and these are problems that good teams face with football because there's a salary cap. And I know you've written about this, who do you think could potentially play themselves out of the Browns' price range for one of those long-term deals?
Yeah, the first guy that jumps to mind is right guard Wyatt Teller. And I know he was a fan favorite last year because he's pancaking guys and mauling guys in the run game. And I get it. And I know Cleveland loves its offensive linemen, and obviously that's an important position. I just don't know if you have other guys to pay, like Nick Chubb and Baker Mayfield and Denzel Ward, and you're already paying Myles Garrett and John Johnson III. I don't know if you can afford to pay your right guard $15 million a year. And that's the kind of money we could be talking if Wyatt Teller has another big-time season, right? He was Pro Football Focus's #1 guard a year ago. So I'm not saying it's impossible, and maybe things change across the line and the Browns decide to give the J.C. Treader money to Wyatt Teller. But as of now, I just feel like he could be that guy that doesn't get re-signed. And, and Ronnie Harrison Jr., the safety, who's pretty good last year in his first year with the Browns, is in the same spot. And you have Grant Delpit and you have John Johnson III. And if those guys stay healthy, it feels like Harrison's a starter in this league, but I don't think the Browns will pay him starter money given who else they have on the roster.
Yeah, and you know what? These are good problems for franchises to have. It means you have too many good players. And, boy, it's been a while since we've had to say that about the Browns. Scott Petrick and I are going to take one more time out. On the other side of the break, we'll take a look at each franchise's biggest mistake the last 5 years. Think about what you would do there as far as the Browns go. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Sports4CLE continues. Scott Petrick and I continue talking Browns. So we've heard from Just Juice, the YouTube drop by Jarvis Landry. Heard Odell Beckham Jr., saw some video behind the scenes action as they were getting ready for Camp Mayfield and getting ready to come back to Cleveland. Jarvis Landry, extra motivated by the success the Browns had last year and the way the season ended. He has been getting after it in the offseason.
I want to maintain. Like when I finished the season, when I started training, I was 212, 213.
Right now?
197. When I was bigger, I did feel stronger before I got my surgery. But at the same time, like, I ain't been 197 since
Year 2.
Yeah, year 2. For real, year 3. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Again, that's Jarvis Landry from Just Juice. Recommended. It's on YouTube, but finish watching our show before you go and watch that. Again, Jarvis motivated, as we keep hearing a lot of these guys, by last year's success.
Yeah, I think by the success and then that failure in Kansas City will motivate these guys coming back. And I know that's a point Coach Kevin Stefanski has made since the game ended and throughout the offseason. You know, we were talking about Odell and where he ranks. You know, I almost feel bad when I say Odell's the number 1 receiver because that feels like a slight to Jarvis Landry, and it's not meant to be. I think Jarvis works as hard as anybody on the team. I think he's had a transformative effect on this organization. You know, you mentioned he and Baker and Myles Garrett is guys that have really been part of this turnaround. And it started, you know, that hard knock speech about contagious and you need to be on the field. And Jarvis meant that, and I think he's carried that throughout his whole tenure in Cleveland. And to hear him talk about maintaining, and he's a year removed from that hip surgery, and, you know, I expect him to be just as good as he's always been. And he talked about being able to shake guys when he weighs 197. And, you know, maybe that's something that was missing a little bit, you know, when he got bigger and stronger. But he's certainly highly productive. And if you give him Odell on the other side, I think that really opens things up for Jarvis.
The other thing that goes underrated with him, he's a heck of a blocker in the run game, and I think that's a big thing that might get overlooked with him. All right, every team's biggest mistake the last 5 years, this is according to the Bleacher Report, and this is a little bit of a layup for Browns fans, hiring Freddie Kitchens in 2019. Scott, gave him the benefit of the doubt. It was pretty clear that things weren't going well pretty early.
Yeah, it was early, and I think people around Freddie saw it even before the fans did. You know, he said, "Uh-oh, this might not work out." You know, and that's you know, Freddie was a likable guy, and he did a good job when he was thrust in that coordinator spot in 2018. Maybe too good of a job because the Browns felt that they could, John Dorsey at least, felt like he was worth keeping and worth being the guy. But he was not meant to be a head coach. It set the progression of the Browns back, and especially knowing that Kevin Stefanski was the number 2 guy in the search. You're thinking, okay, this organization could be, if not a full step ahead, a half a step ahead from where it is with Stefanski taking over a year ago. So, yeah, I would agree that that's the biggest mistake. I would say that there's been a ton of them over the last not only 5 years, right, even longer. I mean, off the top of your head, you think about, well, John Dorsey should not have kept Hugh Jackson for that 3rd year. Or the Haslams shouldn't have kept him, right? It was a terrible match. It led to Hugh being fired halfway through the 2018 season.
Justin Gilbert.
You know, John Dorsey didn't fit with the analytics front office. I mean, there's a million things that went wrong, but Freddie probably tops that list.
And you know what? Through it, and we won't look back. That's it. You just keep looking forward. All right, let's turn our attention to 2021. What would make it a successful season? What do the Browns need to do in order for you to say, yep, this was a success?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's playoffs for sure. You know, I don't think they can miss the playoffs and it still be a success. You know, I mean, maybe they go 10-7 and miss the playoffs, and obviously it's not a complete failure if you go 10-7, but it would be a disappointment if they don't go to the playoffs. And then I think, you know, it's such a crapshoot once you get to the playoffs. But, you know, in July, you can probably say they need to win at least a playoff game for it to be a success, because that would at least be the same as they did a year ago. To show real signs of progress, it's getting to that AFC Championship game, if not further. And that's asking a lot, right? Because only 4 teams in the league get to that championship weekend. But I think the Browns have the talent to do so. So those are the expectations. And to be a success, it's at least a playoff spot.
And you know what? I think the players probably feel that even as much as the fans do. You know, the last thing the players want is a step back.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just hard, like organizationally, you can't set your expectations so high because there's so many variables. But yeah, I think if you went to Baker, Jarvis, or Odell, it would all be, we expect to go to the AFC Championship game for sure.
Scott Petrick from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, brownzone.com, and the Zone Coverage Podcast. Scott, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
All right, Scott Petrick, again, you can read him in the pages of the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram as well as on brownzone.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan will join us. We are talking Kevin Stefanski and Ryan Day. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
As the COVID-19 vaccines become available, you might be asking yourself, should I get it? And if I do, will I be able to go about life without putting my family at risk? You've got questions, and that's normal. The fact is, the vaccines are safe and effective. They're going to save lives. To get the latest on the COVID-19 vaccines, visit getvaccineanswers.org, because getting back to the moments we miss starts with getting informed. It's up to you.
CLE continues. I'm Dave Bacon. Time to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Dave, in my opinion, the time right now is the best of times to be the Cleveland Browns and Ohio State football fan, especially because of two men, head coaches Ryan Day of the Buckeyes and Kevin Stefanski of the Browns. When you have two coaches with a commitment to excellence and show themselves as real and not fake in any way, players have bought into their philosophy and have committed themselves to be the best athletes they can be. This should lead to a college national championship and an NFL Super Bowl victory. Good times for us fans to cheer our team to the ultimate goal.
And that was Ron Byer, voicemail of Truth and Reason. Let's welcome in Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. Mac, what do you make of it? Head coaches for the Buckeyes and the Browns, pretty near the top of fans' lists right now.
Yeah, he's got a good point. You know, thinking about it, you know, Kevin Stefanski, the way that offense and the way that the team really came together last year, you know, even when he didn't be on the sideline, he wasn't on the sideline for that playoff victory. You know, that's a good sign for the Browns that they're in good hands. And he brings up a good point with Ohio State, because especially, you know, in the past, you know, this team has had success, and this team has, you know, obviously won a title, at least in 2014 and earlier on in 2002 as well. But at the same time, I look at not only just Ryan Day, but even some of the assistants. Brian Hartline, one of the top recruiters in the country. And again, another phenomenal recruiting class for these guys. I think he brings up a great point. You know, it really could not get much better, and you really couldn't ask for much more when it comes to, you know, Ohio football between Ohio State and the Cleveland Browns. A lot of success on the way for both franchises and university, I guess, in Ohio State's case. But, you know, I do think that it's a really good situation to be in if you're an Ohio State fan and a Browns fan.
You know, the interesting thing with the Buckeyes is a lot of people thought that the national recruiting would take a hit when Urban Meyer stepped down. If anything, Ryan Day has kind of elevated it, maybe even a step higher in the national profile.
Yeah, it's gone above and beyond, and is really wild how, Urban Meyer had that reputation for being that national recruiter and passing it along to Ryan Day. Ryan Day has not only taken the baton, but he's sprinted ahead of the competition to the point now where this year, out of the 34, I believe, 5-star recruits this year, Ohio State or Alabama landed 13 of those 5-star recruits. So, Ohio State has gone above and beyond with their recruiting, both nationally, locally as well. I do think that, it's incredible what Ryan Day and company have been able to do with Ohio State and with their recruiting classes and building upon what Urban Meyer laid as a foundation and really excelling and going past that with this Ohio State club.
So we're going to go back to the Browns here for a minute. Browns are teasing fans something big coming on July 24th. And here it is, the outline. And the thought is it's going to be the great reveal of the throwback uniforms. And what do you make of that, Mac? What do you want to see? What do you hope it is as far as those uniforms go? Certainly people getting antsy as training camp's closing in around that time as well.
Well, all offseason Browns fans have just been waiting to get some kind of news, some kind of little tidbit that they can just sink their teeth into. Their appetite has been ready to go. And this jersey reveal, it's going to be something that I'm going to be interested to see because, it is the 75-year anniversary. I do think that we're going to get some kind of throwback uniform. And I would say this, at least for me growing up and, watching some of those Browns teams as well, I loved the number on the side of the helmet. I know that they had Braylon Edwards wear that helmet. They had Cohen Winslow wear that helmet as well, where you had the number on the one side. And it wasn't necessarily the traditional Browns helmet. But, I loved those helmets. If they brought those back, I'm going to be over the moon. But I will say this. I think that, I've seen some fans that have been saying, give me the orange, give me the orange, give me the orange. I like the orange. I'm not the biggest fan, but I do think that I don't think it will be orange. I think it'll be maybe a white, possibly a brown. But, I think that no matter what, I think Browns fans are going to end up being happy overall with what they're going to get from this jersey reveal.
Yeah, you get the sense that they're going to go very old school and very basic with it as a throwback. I mean, how can you have a throwback for the only franchise that doesn't have a logo on the side of the helmet? A lot of people don't realize Browns could have been first. When they didn't do it, they decided they weren't going to put the logo on the side of the helmet as well. So it's kind of interesting. All right, one move every team should make before training camp begins. Actually, before the season begins. Let me correct myself there. That would be the Bleacher Report, and they say sign Baker Mayfield to a contract extension. What do you think about that, Mac Robinson?
I'm going to agree with that. I think that Baker, people talk about Baker Mayfield and wanting to extend him at least after the season. Maybe wait, let him see if he can progress at that point. But at the same time, if you do wait for him, he is going to improve this season. I have no doubts about that because obviously with Baker, and we've talked about this ad nauseum throughout this offseason, but, Baker, this is his first offseason where he legitimately has the full coaching staff back, and he's able to not only learn but also grow with an offense. And Austin Hooper even talked about it during some of the off-season training activities. I do think that they're going to be able to expand this offense even more. Just when you thought that Kevin Stefanski was just getting creative, all of a sudden now he's pulling another rabbit out of his hat. So I do think that Baker's going to, improve on this season. And at that point, his number is going to raise. And if I'm the Browns, I'm signing him now where, that price, it's not going to be discounted, but, it's going to be a little on the cheaper side compared to what it would be if he does have that consistency as a negotiating tactic next year.
The other thing, it'll be interesting to see if Baker Mayfield is, I'm guessing Baker Mayfield's not going to be in any hurry to sign it either. And you know what? That's okay. If the Browns wait and they don't sign him and Baker Mayfield earns more money, I guarantee you the Browns will be more than willing to sign that bigger check because it's going to mean they went deeper into the playoffs.
Absolutely. And that's the one part, too, that people got to realize is that, this isn't just like a defensive tackle or even a corner where, it's an important position, don't get me wrong, but, maybe it's a little too expensive for us. it's a quarterback. And especially if any team realizes, just how important the quarterback position is, it's Cleveland, because obviously it's taken a long time. I don't want to get into the jersey. I don't want to get into all the previous starters. We've already done that time and time again, and I'll let the four-letter network take care of that one. But, I look at what the Browns have been able to do, and I think that Baker Mayfield, he is it for you. I don't think you have to go anywhere else. And at that point, you have to go ahead, spend and pony up for your quarterback. And look, with the cap rising, it's going to be a high number for a quarterback regardless. I think some fans are going to be a little surprised by the number that he's going to get, but I do think that it's going to be a solid number for him going into this year, into a second contract with the team.
And the only thing that's that I would say in telling his representation, make sure that you can put the team around him, because there are instances, Joe Flacco, where you signed a huge contract, Joe Flacco, and then you couldn't put a team around the quarterback, Joe Flacco, and you had to tear it down and rebuild. And I'm sure Andrew Berry and that'll be part of the discussions that go on.
Definitely. And on top of that, too, even look at what happened with Jared Goff in L.A., where, again, you were able to bring in Jalen Ramsey. You already have Aaron Donald. You have Robert Woods and a ton of talented players around him. And even at the time, they were paying Todd Gurley. But all of a sudden, then, that contract, you're not able to necessarily surround him with a ton of talent. Or at least if you surround him with good talent, you're letting guys like John Johnson and Troy Hill walk out the door. So, you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of that, and maybe not necessarily give him all of the money that he wants, but at the same time, at least kind of find a middle ground where you're able to meet in the middle there.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying discount it. I'm not saying anything other than make sure you can structure it in a way that you can put the pieces around the quarterback so he can be successful. Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan, and I get to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we will continue talking Browns football, CBS Sports, with who the Browns MVP will be. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
First, they said cigarettes were safe. We know how that turned out. Now, they say they didn't market e-cigarettes to teens. Fact, more than 1 in 4 high school students are vaping, and 80% say their first e-cigarette was flavored. Vaping is harmful to developing brains. The reason we think vaping is safe? Marketing. Same lies, different day. Tell Big Vape to quit lying.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. So, Mac, CBSSports.com predicted every AFC team's MVP. For the Browns, they went with Baker Mayfield. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I look at Baker Mayfield, and really he is, obviously, the offense doesn't go without Baker Mayfield, clearly. You're not having Nick Chubb take the snaps. But at the same time, I also think that Baker Mayfield is the key for this team's success going forward because of the fact that, you have to have Baker take that next step and take that leap. You saw the offense have success early on in the season last year running the ball. However, you saw it take it to that next level last year when you did see him make that second half jump. And so I do think that, Baker Mayfield is the key that's going to make this offense go and make this team go, I think, overall, with not only controlling the clock, but also controlling the offense. And if he's able to limit his mistakes last year, he only had 8 interceptions. I do think that, he will be able to take this team to new heights. And I do think that he really is the true MVP for this team and the true key for this team going into this season.
Yeah, I would agree that I think he's going to be the key, and him elevating it is going to be a key to how far they go. The one thing I worry about, I don't know that he's going to have the ability to get the eye-popping stats. I think the guy that really might take that next leap is Myles Garrett. I wouldn't be surprised if Myles Garrett can stay healthy and on the field. I think he is going to be in that Aaron Donald conversation for defensive MVP. I think he is that good.
Yeah, and you know what? You bring up a fair point there with Myles because, he was on a tear last year before he ended up getting COVID and ended up going on the COVID list. And even when he came back, he talked about how he didn't really feel like the same person coming back. I look at Myles Garrett, and I do think that he's somebody who can push for, one of those sack records, I believe, for the single season. And I think that he's somebody who can, take his game to the next level, especially with somebody as athletic and as much of a threat as Jadeveon Clowney on the other side. I do think that, Myles can really take it to the next level. And I think that he can be the key on the defensive side. And on top of that, too, Myles Garrett, I think, is – because he's a little quieter, I think that he goes slightly under the radar. And even that is being loose, I would say. But, Myles Garrett is somebody who, in every picture that I've seen of him throughout this offseason, looks like he's taking his body to the next level, and he's going to take his game to the next level this year. I don't think that you're far off with that MVP conversation with Myles Garrett, though, as well.
Yeah, and the thing about him, I think, as he has more success on the field, I think people are going to be very captivated by just how he's a smart guy, just an intelligent guy and very well spoken. And I think that I think nationally he could gather some attention. All right, ESPN has NFL players on the roster bubble for all of the teams for the Browns. Mack Wilson, and I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, as much as it pains me as another fellow Mac, it really does. Seemed to be the case with Mack Wilson. Last year he was a little inconsistent. He was injured in training camp, tried to come back from that during the season, and really you just saw a dip in play last year. And the one thing that I was told from, a source coming out of college as well about the reason why Mack Wilson fell to the 5th round was because of the fact that, you might get out of 10 plays, you might get 4 plays that really pop out at you with Mack Wilson. But the other 6, you're kind of left scratching your head and wondering, what was his thought process behind that? Why did he go ahead and make that play? Why did he take that angle? So I look at Mack Wilson. He's somebody who I think needs to elevate his game, in special teams. And I think he will do that. But at the same time, with so many talented linebackers that they brought in, Anthony Walker Jr., obviously J.O.K., Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, as well as, Jacob Phillips, who, was dealing with injuries last year. He's going to have some progression this year once he gets healthy. Then you still have Sione Takitaki from that same draft class. So there's a lot of competition in that linebacker room. And, Mack Wilson, he's going to have to earn it this year, especially in that linebacker room. It's going to be very, very competitive. And, I think it's fair that he's on the roster bubble at this point.
The other one that's going to be very interesting is as you get back into that 4th and 5th wide receiver. Rashard Higgins is a guy. Donovan Peoples-Jones seems to have popped. Anthony Schwartz brings you some speed, so Kadarius Hodge would be another. So those are going to be the interesting dynamics in training camp and preseason as to who can make the roster from that wide receiver group as well.
Yeah, and you bring up a good name with Kadarius Hodge. And Hodge is somebody who, he has that chemistry with Baker Mayfield, and you saw that last year, especially kind of coming out of nowhere for most national pundits at that point. But, Hodge was somebody who really progressed last year, really flashed. And, on top of that, too, he's a special teams ace. And especially after losing Tavir Thomas and losing some of these other guys from special teams, the special teams unit this past year, I think that Hodge is somebody who can, carve out a little bit of a role You saw at least every single year we have one of those, special teams aces that I think can really make a name for himself. I think that Kadero Hodge could be that for this team. And I think that could give him a leg up on some of these other guys who might not necessarily play as much special teams for Mike Prefer, special teams coach. I think that Kadero Hodge could end up sneaking his way onto the roster, not only with his chemistry with Baker, but also his special teams ability.
Yeah, as you get into that 52nd, 53rd, you better be able to play special teams, so that's a point well taken. Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. As always, Mac, appreciate the time and the insight. Great stuff. Thanks, Mac.
Thanks for having me, as always. Appreciate the time.
All right, Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. That'll do it for this edition for Sports for CLE. Tomorrow's scheduled guest, John Fanta and Kevin Arnold. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you back here, Sports for CLE, tomorrow.